Welcome to the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast with KOMO Sports Director Niko and Najee Moye.
Well, hey there. Welcome to a special edition of the KOMO Sports End Zone, an abbreviated one. This is strictly talking about Geno Smith, what you need to know as the Seahawks head into this really incredibly difficult but important home stretch here. 3 games left this season. They are technically out of first place in the NFC West thanks to the Rams getting a win. So they both have 8-6 records, but the Rams beat the Seahawks back on November 3rd. So thus they own the tiebreaker. That all will be settled if the Seahawks and Rams have the same record heading into the last game of the season. There you go. So it's going to be really an interesting way to the end here, if and only if the Seahawks can get back on the winning track. Now, like I said, that's not easy with the Vikings coming to town, 12-2 Minnesota Vikings at that. So that's an interesting thing to look at. None of that really matters in its current state if Geno Smith isn't healthy. So let's get to that. As you all know, left the game in the third quarter against the Green Bay Packers, a knee injury. And anytime, listen, Geno very seldom misses action, okay? Even he took a big hit against the New York Giants. Remember Monday Night Football 2023? He left and somehow came back, right? This is a guy who is tough as they come. He's been through it all in his career. So as Mike McDonald said post-game, when you have something that's severe enough to keep Geno Smith out of the game, then you know it's pretty darn severe, for lack of a better term. It's painful. It's serious, whatever word you want to use. So here's the update today. Better news than expected from the Seahawks. They like what they see as far as there's no structural damage. And what I mean by that is there's no break, there's no tear, nothing that's considered at this point serious. Now, that can mean a lot of things. Does it mean he's 100% a go for this Sunday? Not necessarily. It means he has a heck of a lot better chance than he did 12, 24 hours ago. No question about that. But think about Kenneth Walker's calf injury that has now kept him out of 2 games. He finished that game against the New York Jets. It wasn't until a couple days later when the pain and injury and all that sets in that they realized there was a couple injuries that K9 was overcoming, right? So at the moment, it looks pretty good, better than expected, but this does not mean it's 100% guarantee. I want to play you from Mike McDonald what he said about Geno and his injury.
So, we're fortunate. So a lot of positive optimistic signs coming out of the tests. So Geno's a beast, man. He's in here working out in the morning, working through it. I mean, I know he's still feeling it. But this guy's tough as nails, and hopefully we'll see him practice, throughout the week with optimistic and be ready for the game.
And what's the designation of the injury? Is it a sprain? Is it something different?
To me, give you the exact thing. I think structurally it's all there. We're rolling, but yeah, it's a knee right now.
At this point, would you anticipate him getting most of the snaps with the ones this week?
I'd say I'm optimistic that he'll get most of the snaps.
Yeah, so that is Mike McDonald. That was his Monday afternoon update. And so there's a few things to take away from that. This is why we love bringing you the KOMO Sports End Zone because, I'm at the facility. I was there at that press conference. You start to be able to read into the lingo, the language. And Mike's a straight shooter. This isn't like you're dissecting some language that you're not familiar with or anything like that. He's a straight shooter. So optimistic is good news, right? When you're talking about a knee injury and the hit that Geno absorbed, any number of things, I don't even want to speculate, but any number of injuries can occur from that. A sprain, a tear. We know it's not a tear from what Mike said about the structural stuff. So the fact that they come out of it and he's optimistic, that's good news. And so as we record this on Monday night, no question we will bring you the KOMO Sports End Zone proper, our full podcast, on Wednesday. Okay, and that's when we get our next update from Mike McDonald on Geno Smith, Wednesday at noon. So that's your next benchmark to watch. It's not just a benchmark from the standpoint of what Mike says, but that's the first practice report. They don't do a formal, as far as the injury report anyway is concerned, practice on Tuesday. So that's our next thing. We have to see what happens Wednesday, and that's our next episode of the KOMO Sports End Zone podcast. So your takeaway is this. This is overall better than it could have possibly been in a lot of ways, and in some respects better than expected. Okay? The fact that Geno, as Mike alluded to, almost could have gone back in on Sunday night. By the time they figured out he may have been able to, it was kind of out of hand. Why risk the re-injury? Okay. After that, the idea that the test came back is good. So I would feel reasonably and cautiously optimistic. There's that optimistic word that Mike McDonald was using, that Geno will be able to give it a go Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. And that is a game changer. This is not a knock on Sam Howell. However, when you have 3 games left, and you probably reasonably have to win at least 2 of those to get into the playoffs, win the division for the first time since 2020, you want to do it with the guy who brought you there, right? And for right, wrong, or indifferent, for any issue, I know there's a lot of folks out there that haven't been happy with Geno's play. I think there's a lot of football minds that would tell you some of the mistakes you see out there are caused by a number of different issues, not the least of which is the lack of protection from his offensive line, which is how he got hit in the first place. But I digress. He's the guy who got you there. He's the starting quarterback that led you to 4 straight wins. He's the guy that has weathered the storm throughout a career, that is built for that kind of championship and playoff moment. And you need him. You need him to get there. And so that's the idea here, that this is a totally different animal if Geno's not healthy. So good news on this Monday. The fact that Geno is... The big telling part about what Mike said isn't just that he's optimistic that he can play, but that he's optimistic that Geno would be able to take snaps, right? Oftentimes in the past when Mike has talked about an injury, whether it's K9 or another guy, he'll be like, well, he's not going to practice. He'll come right out and tell you. But then he'll say, but that guy doesn't need practice to play because they trust him, or whatever the scenario may be. So the fact that they're optimistic that he can play, that he could practice, is very, very good news in this regard. So we'll take it as it comes. We'll see what happens, and please make sure you check out the KOMO Sports End Zone on Wednesday for the latest update on that. But Geno Smith, we're going to keep an eye on it, and we'll be there at practice. We'll be there for Mike McDonald's comments, and we'll let you know the latest on that front, whether or not he's able to give it a go, because that is the difference right there. Other breakdowns to come out of that Packers game, that was a forgettable game. It reminded me of the Buffalo game. What's crazy to me is how ineffective some of the things the Seahawks were doing after winning 4 in a row. But yet, even after being so ineffective, they were still in the game. And you might say, what do you mean they were in the game? Well, they had a chance. Geno threw that untimely interception in the end zone, which I will say, you don't want to throw that ball in that scenario, but you can almost see what he saw with Noah Fant being open. It's just the other route with Tyler Lockett was a little bit close, and that corner was able to break off and get that interception, and that was the difference on that play. So, a lot to digest with that, but here's the hope that we've seen this team bounce back from difficult losses before. We've seen them, lose some really ugly games, whether it was the Rams or the Bills, and then come back swinging with big wins. How about the ugly losses to the Giants and Niners early in the season, and then they went on the road and beat the Falcons, okay? So a lot to dislike about that game with the Packers, not the least of which was the Geno injury, but track record in this less than 1 full season we have of a Mike McDonald coach team, you have to like what you see as far as the way this team has the ability to bounce back. So X's and O's, a lot of mistakes to clean up. You can't give away the ball twice. You cannot have the run game really be non-existent, especially Charbonnet was running it well. It was just more of like they got down early and started, because of the scenario of the game, the script as they call it, throwing the ball more. You know what? There's plenty of time. Maybe you run the ball a little bit. And that's one of the takeaways. I was actually talking with my buddy Corbin Smith. You guys know Corbin. He was talking about that to me, and it's like, it's an astute observation. So that's kind of the things they will be cleaning up. They're already doing that. And the hope is, as they prepare for a 12-win team coming to Lumen Field, that A, everybody's healthy as possible, especially with Geno, and B, that it's not the last home game. Because if you look at your little poster schedule at home, your fridge magnet, it is the last home game of this season. But if they can win the NFC West, which is, they're in a virtual tie for it right now. Only a tiebreaker out because the Rams beat them. If they can win the NFC West, they will host a playoff game at Lumen Field for the first time since that 2020 season. All right, that's your Geno Smith update. Make sure you check back for the KOMO Sports End Zone full episode breaking down the Minnesota Vikings coming your way on Wednesday.